That's Tuco. Tuco's the boss, as usual. Been bossed around a lot by him and by computer problems last couple days, really the last couple weeks. But I think we can do a stream. I was trying to do this yesterday and had all sorts of problems related to video capture drivers and software updates. But I'm so tired of dealing with that, and I think maybe we can stream. So I don't have anything especially new. I'm just trying to do something easy to make room for the new stuff and finish up something else. So is Tuco gonna stay over here? Oh, there he is. Cool. Gosh. Tuco just stresses me out so much. Just having so much chaos in this environment that's already uncontrolled, or like sort of unsustainably chaotic for me. Like, I just feel like I'm constantly overwhelmed and unable to deal with things, and then this little chaos monster wants to chew on cables, and guess what this place is basically made out of? So like, it's basically impossible to be completely on top of the cable cat-proofing situation. I feel like I've been able to do it with all the cables that I know about and all the like power cables and things that are like really potentially hazardous. But he's just always finding new things to get into that I haven't been able to anticipate or that I haven't even known about or whatever. He was just like chewing on one of my human friends has a computer here, and they left a video cable unprotected, and I try to be really, I don't know, really attentive to potential hazards like that, but I can't control everyone else always. I just feel like I have to just be looking after this cat constantly. I don't ever have a break from him. That's the thing, is like, people keep saying, oh, you should take a vacation, you're burned out, whatever. I can't take a vacation from this cat. I feel like people really like Tuco. Tuco's really internet popular or whatever. He's also such a handful, and I don't know how to deal with that. Like, that's kind of what I need a vacation from sometimes. Like, a cat sitter would kind of help. I've had friends that could watch Tuco in the past when I went elsewhere, but that only sort of works, like, and this is such a complicated situation that I only really trust someone else to deal with it so much. So yeah, he's a great cat, but also kind of a handful. Also, all this computer stuff is kind of a handful. But yeah, I think it might be working well enough that I can record. So I updated OBS, which is the streaming software I use, which is mostly a good thing. It necessitated this whole cascade of changes where, oh, this camera's auto exposure is wrong again, sorry. Of course, a lot of the bugs that I run into and have to jump around every time I use this software aren't fixed, and things that are no longer working just kind of happen. Yeah, and so that flicker, I know about that. I'm so tired of hearing about it, so please, I don't care. I don't know the root cause. I'm still working on it. I've been debugging this like all day, so whatever. It's gonna flicker sometimes. I don't care. It's not on my other recordings. It's just on this recording. So I mostly just wanted to take this apart, or put it back together rather, take all the weird stuff apart and just put it back together. Just because it takes up less space when it's put together mostly. I'm not really sure if this is going to get used. This is really focused. It's so hard to tell with this video output being so low res. Yeah, I wanted to reassemble it. I also wanted to just see if I could do a factory reset, because that's actually something we hadn't tried. I want to see if it still makes it through that process. I also would kind of like to see if it boots without the MSP430 debugger attached, because I don't think we've tried that either. So those are things to do while the serial ports are still plugged in, which is kind of useful maybe. Did I even do my broadcast checks? So we're live on Twitch and on YouTube, it looks like. That's twitch.tv/scanlime and YouTube at scanlime-in-progress. And Diode Zone, our old friend, still streaming. Anyway, that was the microscope. I was trying to give it something to test. We could put it on something little. Just turn the microscope off when we're not using it, I guess, so the flickering won't be distracting. Yeah. So I'm not quite sure where we're headed with this project, but I think both those of you that answered this poll and my gut are telling me that there isn't a whole lot left to do with it, and so we had an offer from the kind folks at Drobo Engineering to come by their office, which is maybe like an hour and a half train ride or so from where I'm at, and so that might be interesting. They offered that I could come visit and say hi, and exchange this one for the new model. I also, just in the latest email I got from the engineering VP that I've been talking with, he said that they could also just send me the new model, which, as much as I'd like to maybe say hi, it might be cool to avoid like basically spending a day traveling there and traveling back. So yeah, so we could just like take a brief look at the new model, see what they changed, compare it, or we could just like, you know, use it as like a giveaway item, like give it to one of my Patreon supporters. We could, you know, just like find a different home for it. I don't know. I've got a new storage solution basically, which I've been trying to consolidate all of my stuff onto lately. Not all of it basically, but like basically all of it that isn't internet facing. So I've got one internet facing server here, but then kind of one internal storage server, which is now taken over the Drobo's work. Anyway, so yeah, I think maybe we'll do something like that. All right. I'm actually so bad at keyboarding, like, and I don't know whether it's because I use so many different kinds of keyboards and I'm always using them at like suboptimal locations. I don't have like I have like a normal desk with like a comfortable keyboard. That's what you're seeing in the little inset down there. But I'm not at that super often. Like I'm often working at my laptop in weird positions or like up here. And like the laptop, I'm not even working at it consistently. I'm usually using like an external keyboard. And so, yeah, I'm actually just not very good at typing things consistently, and a bunch of people like to give me shit about it or just like be complaining about it or whatever, and it's like kind of weird. I don't know. I'm in a really cranky mood lately, so I should mostly just not talk. Should still be ready, I think. Yeah. No simulated lithium battery. So I don't think that turned out to be extremely necessary. At least assuming we're not doing any firmware updates. The fan just blew cat hair everywhere. just plug in there. Oh, I forgot to actually say hi. Hi, Jenny. I don't want to be like a complete antisocial grump. Like it's nice to say hi. Oh yeah, we had this thing in a state where it was doing a reboot loop. So yeah, it's reproducing that behavior just fine. I think we can get it out of that loop just by removing one of the disks. Oh, that's where the weird brightness is coming from. Gosh. I had to make my filter setup for the DSLR somewhat more complicated because they changed the way the color key or the chroma key filter works. Which I think the way they changed it probably makes it more useful for regular chroma keying, but it breaks this weird thing that I'm doing here with the DSLR. That's better. Yeah, so I think it's trying to run this disk array in degraded mode now. I think you just hold down the button as it starts. I just wanted to see if they actually had documentation. Well, this little dude over here is relayouting its zones, like you'd expect. I don't know if it'll do anything if I just press the button right now. Doesn't seem to. tell, actually. Pack read only. This application is relatively chatty, though. I would expect we would get output if the button was doing something. Like, it's got the regular Drobo FS mounted. So let's try holding it down for a while it's on. I don't know if this does anything. I'm pretty sure it does something if you hold it while it boots. Like, I think it's implemented somewhere in the startup scripts, like user space. Actually, I forget whether it's on the Linux side or the VxWorks side. I thought I saw it on the Linux side, but I don't know. Yeah, let's let it cleanly reboot with this button pressed. Just keep the mouse cursor out of the way when I'm doing these recordings. There it goes. That's the whole shutdown. Now, the button is still held. And press power. That static IP address configuration is part of what I would like to clear, right? Oh, here we go. Clear disk flag is set. Don't actually need to clear the disks. I was more interested in clearing. I mean, maybe it considers the onboard USB to be one of the disks that it wants to clear. We sure don't have a real-time clock. Yeah, so I don't know if that actually did what I wanted it to do. I saw a bunch of stuff about a clear flag float by. It does look like it's unmounted the file system. Or that it just hasn't mounted it yet on this boot. Might be more interesting to try the hold down the button approach with the disks ejected. What happens if I just start yanking the rest of these disks? It did not like that. I wonder if that was the same reset from before. So we never actually got to the bottom of that reset. It would probably take a lot more debugging effort to get to it without, you know, like without more information about how to enable logging or how to enable some of the built-in debugging, because we'd have to reverse engineer how to enable some of that stuff too. But yeah, it seemed, I don't know, a lot of the symptoms match maybe a power problem, but we tried to look at the power rails on the O-scope and they looked completely clean. So maybe it's a power problem elsewhere in the system. Maybe it's a problem with the AHCI driver, or with some of the HCI controller chips. I don't know, it seemed to be something in kind of that general area. So this is a little quieter because there are no disks. Just a fan. Just a fan and solid state disks. Probably should have been holding down that button. And this time it says it's found no valid static config. So it could be that those configs are only stored on the disk array. I'm not sure whether they store those in the disk array and the like onboard flash or just the disk array. That's interesting. I don't know why it's trying to hibernate right now. Oh, RTP is not active. Interesting. So RTP failed to load because there were no disks, and then because RTP didn't load, it decided to hibernate on shutdown. That's interesting. So that has the symptom of making the system take way longer to shut down if there are no disks. It's strange. Let's try power on with the button. It's weird that the only documented reset procedure I came across, at least in that quick search, was to do it through the GUI application. There's the clear disk. Issuing clear disk request to Linux core. Linux clear disk. I don't know, maybe that's all it's gonna do. It's weird that there isn't a more satisfying way to properly reset this to factory defaults. Because I don't think we actually cleared the USB disk at all. the very least, I think it's still full of logs and stuff. Oh, I forget how this works. Yeah. Ow. Yeah, that's weird. Well, I don't know what else to do with this. I was hoping for like a satisfying kind of factory reset to do before kind of putting this aside, but I don't know if we'll get that. And I mean, I'm not really worried about the privacy of this data. It just seemed like it'd be nice to clean up. At least some of the timestamps are just completely wrong. Got 2088, 2039, some 2019, whatever that was. Can we at least delete the crash logs? Oh, I think that fan actually cut me that time. I should wash that briefly. Oh. What 777 permissions? Oh, you mean the memory permissions? I don't know what you're talking about in the comments. It's not even case sensitive. Where would you see permissions on the logs? I don't think that file system supports Unix permissions. Pretty sure that's a FAT32 file system. Oh, these permissions. Yeah, this is not a Unix file system, so this is not real. All right. Well, let's try this without the debug adapter, maybe. That was a cute failure mode. We crashed because we couldn't remove the crash logs. All right. so it works without the MSP430 debugger. Might as well leave the headers on. Yeah, I don't know. I've got this terrible little, like, extremely temporary soldered on kind of bodge situation back here. Maybe I should take that off. I don't know if that'll fit with the RF shield in place. I think the less bodgy headers can probably stay. The fan is kind of nice when it's not cutting me. Sure takes it a while to get to the point where it's like, oh no, there are no discs, bye. And then like the RTP flat out exits, so I guess you can't just put the discs in one at a time. All right. That might be the last time this thing gets powered on for a while. Heatsink is toasty. Yeah, I don't know what file systems VxWorks usually runs on. I've certainly seen people run it on FAT before. Like that seems to be pretty common, but I don't know if they also have their own Unix-like file systems. Seems like they would if they support Unix-style permissions, but I don't know. Oh yeah, sorry the stream is getting started so late today. As so often happens, I keep trying to get these streams started and the problems pile up, and then at some point I've got to throw up my hands and say, alright, enough, I fixed most of the problems, we've got to stream anyway. And maybe I just need to give up earlier. Well, I'm trying to make less of this terrible... Like, a lot of the storage changes lately do actually simplify the whole thing. It's just kind of annoying to get from point A to point B sometimes. Guess I do need the microscope back. I was gonna stop the recorder, but I didn't, so it's just been recording a black screen for a little while. Which isn't so bad at variable bitrate, although I don't know if that one actually is variable bitrate. I think I might have that one set to fixed bitrate still, I don't know. I'm trying to use VBR for everything I can, because it just makes sense not to waste bits. It doesn't always help that much. So yeah, I'm just kind of having a chill stream here where I take this apart, clean up my desk, just get some reassembly footage, I guess, while also trying to make room for other projects. It's just one of those like mundane things that I seem to need to do about a million instances of, and then I just have time for like one or two of them. But we're making progress. Anyway, thanks so much for everyone who shows up. I appreciate the company. Yeah, vacation's a weird idea, because like I don't know how I would really do that. I've certainly tried in the past, not like the really recent past, but I feel like I had this period of time after, when was that? That was basically, so I had this job at a software company, and it was also while I was concurrently dealing with like a bunch of like kind of transition recovery related stuff, like kind of getting over like kind of physical hardships that were temporary, and so I kind of did this thing where I just got really deep into that job and didn't really want to do anything else because it was a great way to escape from the stuff that I was basically just trying to wait out anyway. But then that just kind of continued and turned into this really, really deep burnout. And so when that happened, I eventually just had to quit and leave, and I just had a really hard time even looking at code for a long time. Like, I didn't want to do anything even slightly software related. Hardware was a little easier, I guess, but you know, it was still all pretty similar. And the stuff that I've done has always been kind of on the line between hardware and software, so it's kind of hard to escape it and do anything that was kind of in a technical job, the way people use that word. So yeah, I don't know, I tried to do stuff that was kind of more art, and I ended up still making like kind of tech art, but and then I just got really burned out from all that too, because that just seemed to lead to a bunch of kind of you know, it's like I had kind of my tech burnout, and then I kind of had my like humanity burnout related to the art stuff. And so I just don't know where else to go. And there's like, well, there's animals. That's great. But I'm also really exhausted by my cat. And it's like, well, maybe it would help to just go take care of other people's animals, like volunteer at a animal shelter. You know, probably not take on more foster cats here, but help other people with their cats. That could be nice. Yeah. Anyway, I didn't care to clean this up extremely much. I just kind of wanted to take the obvious fly wires off of this. I guess it would be nice of me to clean up the flux to whoever's handling this board next. Even if that's just a recycling person, I don't know. I don't know who's dealing with this next. Yeah, a lot of my projects do get pretty in-depth. I'm not really sure what the depth is for sometimes. Like, I mean, it exists, and like, I appreciate it, but it feels like a lot of times people don't really want to see it, and they don't really, I don't know, like, it's not as interesting as just kind of following the urges to just do whatever's shiny, you know? And I don't know, I shouldn't really talk. It's not like I have like a coherent strategy for figuring out what to do. I'm just kind of trying to make do with whatever I can. This could use another rinse or so if I was being really thorough, but I don't want to overdo it for something that I don't need to clean extremely well. I mean, yes, I've already overdone it. I know I have a bunch of Kim wipes somewhere, but I'm actually I don't see any right here. So I'm gonna go see if I can find some Kim wipes. I don't know if my huge stash is still somewhere. I found at least one box. Oh man, I was thinking, I shouldn't let the stream go too late. I should save time to go to the pizza place before they close, but I think it's already a little late for that. I think they close at 10 on weekdays, and it's already like 9:30 here. I did eat a thing today, so it's not urgent. Okay. So that's the back plane. That's all we did to the back plane. And then we have the main board. Yeah, I guess that's a good point. I can't try too hard to be a crowd pleaser, because that way lies madness, and I've got enough of that in my life. It's a question from Twitch chat about what I'm doing. I'm mostly just cleaning up a mess, really. Nothing big, just taking some wires off a circuit board, putting the circuit board back in the box. It might work, it doesn't extremely work. It works enough, I don't know. I'm gonna make sure it boots at least, but I'm not extremely concerned about this object right now at this point, since I'm not planning on using it as part of my infrastructure, and I have an offer for a free replacement, and I've already got the data off. Okay, so some of these passives were like potentially part of the problem. So you might see this little solder blob over there where I replaced a 0 ohm resistor. And that was part of the circuit that, well, that was part of the power sequencing. So this microcontroller, as the system booted, would use that enable to turn on one of the main 3.3 volt regulators. And it, you know, if that wasn't working, the system wouldn't have even gotten to the point where it was, really. But it's possible that something over there was fragile, and me kind of poking around on here actually broke it. So that I ended up replacing, but it's fine the way it is. Where's that one? Gosh, some of these are 40 gauge wire. 30 or 32 gauge is really where it's at. Anything too small. 40 gauge is too small. Oh, that's an interesting question. The same person in Twitch, it's do. They're asking how I learned how to grok circuits. Yeah, I mean, well, it happens pretty gradually. Like, you know, nobody understands everything about circuits, but I feel like one skill that is pretty useful for like kind of making your way around complicated projects like this is it is just sort of the skill of knowing how to kind of make kind of intelligent changes in a system that you don't completely understand. So like I don't totally understand this thing at all. This thing is super complicated, but like I know enough about it, and I have enough like of the right kind of experience to just know like what the bounds of what I know are, and like how I might go about finding things that I don't know, and that kind of stuff. Like that, a lot of that just comes from experience and like trying to go through this stuff the hard way, and then like gradually it becomes less hard. But there are some resources that I would recommend. Like there's some books that helped me as a kid. I got a lot out of the Forrest M. Mims books, like getting started with electronics. These days I recommend The Art of Electronics to a lot of people, although that's like not quite a beginner's book, but it's something that you'll appreciate if you're trying to get serious and like learn more about electronics later. Let's see, so that was just glued down. Isopropanol takes off hot glued like nothing else. It's very nice. There's a screw holds in this flash disk. It's gonna be a little tricky to remember exactly what kind of screw goes everywhere. I might have to cheat a little or guess. I don't know about these serial port headers. I attach some of these pretty badly. I might just remove all the headers just because I don't know if mechanically these are going to be sound with the case assembled. Which would be a little annoying if I end up having to do any more debugging, but I'd like to not. So let me just take a quick look at that chip under the microscope, make sure I didn't miss anything. It seems fine. Gosh, do I really want to remove the serial ports? I think I have to at least remove one of the serial ports. I don't remember which of these is which, really. Oh wait, this one up here was actually, oh, that was already soldered on. It's the one that kind of interferes with the heatsink that is not soldered on, and that's also the one that I'll need to pull off. That's fine. is also pretty strange to me that this device like doesn't really give you a lot of like I would find this very hard to debug without the serial port is I guess what is giving me a little bit of anxiety right here. Because I want to make sure it boots. It's probably going to boot, but if it doesn't, there's basically nothing I can do without soldering these right back on. So, but if I was planning on keeping them on with the case fully assembled, I would have to do a better job of making sure these are on well and have good mechanical clearances. Whereas these are obviously soldered on very badly because I did it temporarily and only from the top side. Sorry about the black flickering. That's not actually in the other set of recordings, but I spent a bunch of time today trying to debug video capture drivers and couldn't actually find a solution, and it happened concurrently with switching versions of a bunch of software on this machine, so I've been expecting it's probably a software problem, but it might be a hardware problem. The hardware chain here is complicated. And it's not showing up on any of the other capture devices that are getting the same signal. So that narrows it down a bit, but also makes it seem less likely that it's hardware. Tiny piece of solder that I'm trying to use up before I break off another piece. And that jumper was there to begin with. If I understand the circuit correctly, that lets the system on chip control the reset on the MSP430, which is probably useful for some upgrade scenarios. I'm gonna clean this while we're here. Yeah, you don't need to tell me about the video problem. I'm aware of it. I'm just letting you know that I know about it. That's what's going on here, all right? I'm going to start reassembling mechanical parts, I think. At least some of the ones that are easy to test when this is partially assembled. So of the easiest things to do. I put the back plane on the back plane bracket. I also want to put that back together, but I don't remember quite what screw goes there. I think it's probably one of the flat ones, but I want to try doing some of the other ones I'm more sure about first. Thanks for your review of my viewfinder feed. I'm glad it's still watchable. Like, it'd be cool if I had someone else I'm working with, like a coworker who could, you know, like we could split up the problems, but instead I'm basically always dealing with way more debugging than I actually have time to do. There's always stuff that's broken. I'm always trying to fix it. Use slightly the right screwdriver for this, maybe. Oh, that's not extremely the right screwdriver either. Oh, you know what? Did I put that on backwards? This doesn't actually fit at all. I should have checked that fit before spending time hyper focusing on tightening screws while trying not to complain about Chad. I think these capacitors were actually supposed to be protected in between these pieces, and I think the open side of the bent metal bracket is actually for the fan. I just forgot how this goes together, and I'm sure all of you are gonna let me know. That's my favorite part about doing this. Two goes hanging out. Yeah, that makes much more sense. And then the drive cage comes in this way, the tabs go through that. I don't know why I'm explaining any of this. I guess I'm just talking to myself, thinking out loud. If there's a word for that, it's a real thing. Except when I do it here, everyone assumes I'm talking to them. Yep, spend all day trying to get the stream working, and then it still has problems. And then it's still the same old experience when I'm here. That does have a good bit of wiggle room. I was worried about that when I took this apart. Like, the screws are a good bit smaller than the holes. I assume they designed this to be centered in there, but like I guess that doesn't necessarily affect the alignment of the connectors with the drive cage, because that seems to be handled by these pegs, which are pretty tightly fit. Oh gosh. I think I'm just systematically figuring out how to take everything that I think I know how to do, that I like, that I can share with people, and then figure out how to prove myself wrong. Like, oh, I think I can just do electronics on video, and people like that, and I can just do that. And I'm like, well, nope, actually, I really don't like talking to people about this, and so I should just shut up. It just feels like I'm figuring these things out the hard way. Most of these are the kind of panhead screws. I think there was one flat one, and I want to say that actually goes in the memory card. Oh no, there's two flat ones. Ah, I think they hold the battery tray down. Yeah, I seem to remember the battery tray was two screws, and they were different from the others. The rest of these are the same. So that means this kind of screw holds the memory card down. can we put on? There's a bunch of metal work. Yeah, that doesn't leave much room for any of the debug headers. There's the debug Ethernet. We kept seeing references to that in the output, you know, in the firmware and in the serial logs, but I hadn't actually gone looking for the hardware, but they do seem to have a cutout so that you can access the debug Ethernet even with the thing fully assembled. I think that's how they debugged the VxWorks kernel level stuff. But I think that was a compile time option we don't have. Alright, and so this kind of, I think, lays on top at first, and then gets included in those 4 screw holes. Okay, and then that... Do I listen to metal? Is that related to this? You mean like metal music? I like metal. I don't listen to it enough to have like a lot of opinions about like different groups, but like I certainly would be into it if you were just like playing some in the same room I was hanging out in, but I'm not like enough of a metalhead to like, you know, have strong feelings, so yeah. I don't know. Microscope is just kind of in the way now. I think maybe I'd assemble the drive cage thing. Let's actually take all these drives out. It's full of heavy hard drives. I've got a bunch of hard drives now that I don't actually trust enough to use in my main RAID arrays, or they're just too small to worry about or to deal with. But they aren't completely dead. That's pretty much where these come from. And then I have a much bigger stack of drives that are completely dead. Alright, so this is pretty light without the drives. And it's got light pipes, it's got spring-loaded little retaining clip things, spring-loaded doors, spring-loaded backstops, I guess. So this had four kind of different screws to hold the front bezel on, which I think I took these off previously, but then I put them back on and they seem pretty tight. I don't know if there actually was any screws holding this on. That might have actually been free to float just a little bit in that axis. Huh. Maybe this bolts onto that L-shaped piece. Alright, this is where the motherboard actually screws on. button temporarily. Cool. Yeah, a lot of the system is inaccessible with that shield assembled. You would need a different version of this metal piece, or you just need to not have the metal piece. I suspect they've got a metal piece with a punch out there, but I don't know. I don't see like an easy perforation for that, so maybe they just have a little in-house machine shop and they do that for the development units. I don't know. I think the video flickering thing is related to video formats. It seems to not happen on the 1080 progressive stuff. But I think this one is interlaced. I think the other one's interlaced. Well, I know the microscope is 1080 I60, and I think this is like interlaced but lower resolution. I don't know exactly what resolution though. Gosh, this little box was a useful file server for a long time. It was never as fast as I liked, or would have liked it to be, but it worked. I think the system on chip actually has something like 4 Ethernet ports, but I think they use external PHYs. Not entirely sure about that though. Pretty sure. I think that's the PHY chip for the regular, the one that's actually being used. And I wasn't looking that closely, but I think there's an unpopulated spot for a PHY for the debug port. I think that's ready for the drive cage to go on top. I think maybe it's time to prepare the back piece though. This is luckily keyed, so there's only one way to put the switch in. Nice of them. The fan though, how does the fan actually want to go on? I believe this was an exhaust. That would make sense. And the connector, where was the connector? This fits in kind of like that. So the fan power connector is at that corner. I think the fan would have gone in. that's right. Obviously I got the whole disassembly on video, but I don't really care to scrub through a bunch of video right now. Like, if I'm going to do that, it's going to be for editing, not for reassembly. So this seems to match where this cable was sort of crimped in. And this goes on with 4 of these cute little plastic rivets. These need to unpress. You kind of pull the stem out of the rivets, and then the end should fit through the hole again. Oh, these are so satisfying to install. I think Adafruit sells these now, these little rivets. I could be wrong about that. I think that's right. This needs to go on next. Yeah, that matches. Yeah, that cable is a little tight the way they have it routed, but seems roughly right. A little unclear on the order of assembly here. So this seems to have rails to hold it in place. And screws. Just trying to get a sense for how these pieces can fit relative to each other. I remember these sliding apart relatively elegantly. Just not quite sure how that happens with all these cables attached. Oh, you know what? I remember the fan power cable being super annoying. Like, we had to reach in there after it was pretty much entirely assembled. So maybe the fan power cable doesn't go in and this whole thing just slides in the back. That's gotta be how it works. Maybe. This enclosure is so weird. Oh yeah, so it's got just enough space to clear all the connectors back there. Cable assembly on this is not very fun for the person assembling it. Because I think that's basically how it goes together, but I have to have that wire plugged in first. I should make sure I have the right number of screws for this. And I need to put the battery tray on somewhere. I think the battery tray just goes right on back of here. A lot more interesting with more attention to the photography. So this actually has a bunch of features that have to fit just right between the circuit board and the front panel. It also has these tabs that have to line up just right between the chassis and the backplane. Oh yeah, and then this snaps in place once I've actually got that. So yeah, that needs to fit around the circuit board. And all the light pipes, like all these LEDs on the front panel have individual light pipes that all have to line up. Like that. I think. Yeah, that's snapped into place. So that's the motherboard, the backplane, and the drive cage. So those are threaded. Yeah, there's no screws or any other attachments to the very outer shell, except for 4 at the bottom. The rest of it's just a bent piece of metal. I think 2 of these go in on each side. if I'm putting these screws in too early, but it seems like I can put them in, so I'm going to try. It would be good to demonstrate a somewhat successful repair, just by showing that it maybe like, operates normally. It's been a while since I looked at the new user setup, but I think you basically plug this into your network and run a program, and it finds the device and talks, and then you can configure it further. So I've got 4 of the pan head screws, which I think might all go on the outer case. I've got 2 of the flat head screws, which I think were for the battery tray. I could leave the stubby connector in there, but I might just keep this in my pile of weird connectors. I don't know, who needs the connector more, my junk drawer or this junk object? Like this normally would have gone right here. And this. Oh! Is that where this goes? I thought that's where the battery was. In that position, the zip tie bumps right up against the top of the Ethernet socket. So I don't know if that was it, but it might have been. Doesn't seem like it fits further up. Yeah, I'm not gonna... You know, I think I'm gonna throw out the corroded piece of metal maybe instead of leaving it in there. I don't know. Let's maybe put this, well, no reason to put the screws in even. Yeah, let's just throw out the corroded bit of metal and then keep the extra screws and put it together without that and without this. So it'll just have no battery, no pretense of battery. Seems to work that way, which might not be intentional. So if that's it, I think we just have to get all the wires plugged in while the back chassis goes on. So there's the fan wire and there's the button wire. Both of those are super annoying. I think that should go that way. Why would they do it this way? Is there a trick I'm missing, or is this just a cruel joke they play on their assembly workers? The circuit board down there is bolted to the chassis it's in. It doesn't slide around. Yeah, there's a way to push that in there if you get your finger at just the right angle, but it's hard to get on camera. Yeah, there's the power button. And then the fan's even worse. I don't know how this is supposed to work. Okay, I think you can kind of grab it with one hand right up in here. I hope they included a little more slack in this connector on the next design. Oh gosh. That is a really tight fit. There's like almost not quite enough slack to actually maneuver that around and get the metal tabs into the right place without bursting the wire out of the back of the connector. But then it just kind of slides into place. And that just covers the back of the motherboard nicely. Alright, so there's a few more parts, but they're really just cosmetic. Oh, wait, no. I'm 4 screws short. The feet are different screws, which are in this box. Okay, there are some screws that hold that joint that we just completed. So right there, and then the same 2 places on that side. Actually, I think that was, yeah, both of those are for the thing we just assembled. I need like a little isolated test network for projects like this. Because at this point, it would actually be nice for filming purposes to just show it, like making a DHCP request and all that. But you know, I have like a real DHCP server that I don't necessarily want to like log into and mess with on stream, but I could have a separate one. Okay, so the front is actually entirely magnetic. We're missing this little rubber O-ring though, which I guess I could put on. This is no longer 10.0.0.8. Can I get this adhesive off cleanly? Sorta. Yeah, some people probably wouldn't have put the sticker here because they appreciated the shiny exterior. This also still has a patched up firmware on the MSP430 which disables any flash memory writes. So that means that it will not actually overwrite with the new firmware if the firmware is updated. It also might mean that it gets like stuck in a configuration update loop or something in the future. So I can see it trying to reboot to make some kind of change and then being like, oh no, what happened? The change didn't get made. Let's try that again. And it keeps doing that. Oh, Tuco's head's just like hanging off the edge of the desk there. So it's got this giant floppy O-ring for the front of the drive. I think normally this is also held in by the metal housing, but I think it might be easiest to put this whole thing into the metal housing if this O-ring is held on by the magnetic part. So maybe we can get this into position and use the magnets to hold it. You know what, I think that the gap that the magnets leave might actually be slightly smaller than the O-ring, so the O-ring is a little bit compressed during normal operation. Maybe this whole part is easier to put on after the whole thing is in the metal tube. Yeah, let's put both of these aside. There's a back piece, which also kind of seems like maybe it goes on last. This is definitely asymmetric. I think the easiest way to tell the sides apart might be to look for the memory card slot on the bottom. And there's a flange on the back, so I'm thinking the only way this can go together is like this. That's almost lined up. Cool. Kind of snaps into place. And it looks like these are designed to be pressed together while they're screwed in. Oh, hey, there's a bug in here. Doesn't seem very healthy. It's probably doing better in there than it would be around Tuco. Alright, these are interesting too. They're rubber washers that seem to go with these weird little shoulder bolts. The shoulder should make a hard stop against the case and then hold the rubber in. Where is the hole? I'm just going to put these slightly in and then fuss with the alignment. Oh yeah, that's a good question. I don't think that's really been decided. Joe is wondering what the fate of the Drobo is. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a good use for it at this point. It is no longer part of my storage infrastructure. I've got my data off. It kind of works, but is not really something I would trust at this point. Because there are several reasons why I expect this to have problems. And in fact, we didn't really fix the problem with the reset on that first disk bay, so that might still require workarounds if you were going to use this. So it's like kind of fixed, but not extremely fixed. I'm mostly just putting it together so that it doesn't take up a lot of space on my desk, but I'm not quite sure what we're actually doing with it. So we had an offer to go down to Drobo headquarters. At least, like, I don't know if it's like their actual headquarters. I think it might be. It's like their engineering headquarters, I think, in Sunnyvale, which is semi-close to where I'm at. Not extremely close, but like kind of a alright day trip by public transit. So we could do that. I'm not sure if they want me to record or if they're going to want me to like sign an NDA. If I can go there and record and kind of make that part of the video, that could be really interesting. If it's more just to say hi and get shown around, that would be cool, but I don't know if it would be worth the trip. I'm still kind of thinking about that. But I also just recently got an offer from them that, well, I was still kind of trying to decide like what to do. And the VP of engineering, who's the person I've been talking to, he mentioned that he could also just send the new model. So we could maybe get the exchange, or at least get the new model without going there. I guess that also implies they don't necessarily want this either. So I don't know. If I went there, I'd probably take this. They seem to want it. But if they're just gonna send me a new model, maybe they don't actually want this. I don't know. So yeah, I think TLDR, I don't really know what we're doing. I'm just reassembling it. It kind of works. I just want it to take up less space, and I wanted maybe some of the reassembly footage. These two things that look like they're useful screw holes, but I think everything back here snaps on at this point. So this is basically done. There's just some trim. This thing's a little bit like a vehicle, or like an Apple device or something. They're definitely like taking some cues from the like Apple mechanical engineering, which I don't know if that's a great idea. That's a great way to make your product like way more expensive than it needs to be. But I don't know. They've kind of got some of that design language, you know, all the concealed fasteners, and making it sort of sleek and spaceship-like on the outside. So yeah, this goes in with clips there and there, and then just spacers to hold this away from the grill. The spacers are interesting. They're just like really small and kind of disappear when the whole thing's assembled. It's an interesting look. Feels like that isn't quite. Yeah. Yeah. That goes together. Yeah, so it has a pretty solid feel. Like, the spacers are only necessary to keep you from pushing this in and damaging it, but it also makes it feel pretty good. Not quite as clear why they didn't put the fan closer to the back. I think that was really just for mechanical mounting reasons. I don't know if there's like a good acoustic or airflow reason. I don't know. There's the back and the bottom. There's the front. Oh yeah, this kind of press fits in. Weird O-ring. Picks up dirt extremely easily, but it looks nice. And I guess the idea is you don't have a lot of dirt in here because it's your nice pristine disc bay. Which kind of works, I guess. But you're forcing air through it constantly. Alright, I'm not 100% sure how to tell if it's working other than just to look and see if the LEDs look about right. So we'll just try that first, and then maybe if we feel like it, we'll actually try to like use it normally. I don't know. Just put it through some paces. My desk is a lot cleaner though. Got this gross bracket that's I think going in the garbage, but Drobo. So, I've got the AC power. Let's re-plug that in, I guess. I think if I put those same discs back in, it'll try to come up at that old IP address, which wouldn't be great if it's on my LAN, because there's another device there now. Cool, so I plugged it in and there was a little flash code on here. Let me do that again. It's the same thing we were seeing before from the MSP430 firmware. Like that. There might be the version number. I don't know. I haven't actually looked at the firmware in that much detail. But then I think we can power it on. It's just the fan noise, there are no discs in there. And then, this is a view of the thing that we had been, at least I'd been kind of ignoring this previously, you know, with the serial port output, I hadn't been looking that closely at the LEDs, and now it's all we get. That looks familiar. Seems to make sense so far. Yeah. If I remember right, that error happens as soon as the RTP fails to load, which is what it would do if it has no disks. So yeah, no disks. I don't necessarily want to connect it to the network without giving it a new IP address or a different network, but we could just put the same disk pack in and see if it loads the disk pack. And it'd be interesting, we should be able to reproduce both the reset and the steady state behavior, like with 5 disks and 4 disks respectively. Also, I had got this into a state where it was working with 5 disks. Like that bug, I still don't know exactly what's going on there. And it seems to depend on which disk I put in that slot. So, like, I think these are stacked in the order I was using them. And this order was causing a reset. lot easier to put discs in when this thing's assembled. So I think this blinky pattern is part of the bootloader. Is that the reboot? Oh yeah, I just remembered those serial ports are also available on that connector at the bottom. So we haven't made a little breakout for that yet, but we should be able to get access to the serial ports without disassembling this thing at all, which is actually great. I just haven't made a cable for that. But that's actually maybe not at all. I think you might have to take off the outer shell. But there's a little header, I think 2mm pitch. So like accessible but not quite like standard 0.1 inch, and that had a couple of other signals, but mostly the 2 serial ports, if I remember right. Anyway, I think this is reboot looping. It's just a little harder to tell what's going on. I'm gonna try, yeah, so I think it just rebooted again. I didn't actually touch it. But I'm gonna try taking this first disk out. Yeah, now the disks are spinning up. So that is the point where it resets. It's like right as it's powering up the disks, which you'd think might imply a power problem. I'm just not quite sure we have the data that supports that yet. Seems like it could be power in some way we haven't noticed yet. It could be something weird with the SATA controllers. It could be an interrupt routing issue. I mean, it could be another 0 ohm resistor for an IRQ line or something that's busted. So this will make a little more progress, and then I think we'll see 4 green lights. Or maybe yellow, depending on what it's doing. Oh, there it goes. You blinked and missed it. Alright, well, this seems to be pretty much what I would expect. I don't know that we need to do much more to this. I think this can pretty much get put aside at this time. How badly does this thing panic if you just eject a disk? It's hard to tell if that's normal or if that's a symptom of the same bug, huh? I think that was a full reboot. Oh yeah. So like whoa, that hard disk was still spinning as I pulled it out, and it was a little more gyroscopic action than I'm prepared for. Alright, you know, one idea that came up earlier was I was kind of curious how hard it would be to get OpenWRT running on this thing. I wonder if we could just do a quick web search here while I'm wrapping things up. Just curious what OpenWRT already runs on and if they run on anything similar. It is cranky. Oh, which specific Marvel CPU was this? I think it was the MV78 something or other. Oh yeah. There does seem to be an OpenWRT port. Gosh, it would be an interesting thing to maybe just like try flashing the generic OpenWRT build for this chip. How likely is that to go anywhere? I mean, we have U-boot. We don't even really have to make any serious modifications to this thing. We just need the serial port back. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I might just put it in my stash of project objects until we find a better use for it. It seems like not a bad, just like Marvel Armada XP development platform if we end up wanting to play around with embedded Linux some more. Because, you know, embedded Linux is fun, right? Yeah, have I ever built OpenWRT? I've used a bunch of embedded Linux build systems. I don't know if I've ever actually used OpenWRT, so that might be a new thing too. Could be interesting. Alright, well, I think that's pretty much it. I just wanted to have a little bit of a chill stream while I put this thing back together and make sure my streaming setup works. And I guess, well, I do need to actually debug the black screen flickering stuff. I just don't quite know what the next step is there. I think, I mean, I can try attaching some other SDI input grabber thing to the exact same cable I'm feeding into these devices, but I don't even know if that would tell me anything especially conclusive. Because, I mean, these Blackmagic capture devices seem to be slightly pickier about their signals, so I could imagine other devices might like this just fine. I was pretty sure that I had this problem before, and I worked around it by holding back the drivers. But I already tried a bunch of old drivers and old firmwares back to like early 2017 and didn't see anything that seemed to help. So I don't know. It's frustrating. Oh yeah, so I think what was going on is with the red lights, it was errored out, like it tried to run the RTP failed. Now it's hibernating because the RTP failed. It apparently hibernates when the RTP is not reachable. So it's going to take a sec to power off. So if we could run OpenWRT on it, it might make a decently alright little Linuxy thing. I don't know, it still doesn't have enough memory to really be a great NAS. That 2 gigs of RAM seem pretty limiting even if Linux had that all. But it's obviously enough. I mean, I was using this for a while. It wasn't terrible. I think it is actually off now. Alright, well this is now either a project machine or a donation or e-waste. I'm not really sure what, but it's here now in one piece. And I need to put that somewhere proper, but look, a clean desk, sort of. And these will go somewhere else too. Alright, well, I think I can do the rest of this on my own without the cameras running. Well, thanks a lot. I've got some much more interesting streams to get to you. I just really needed to get this wrapped up completely, so despite the tech problems, it seems like we've reached that point. So I'll try to bring you another stream ASAP with some actually interesting content, hopefully. I've got a bunch of cool stuff that came in the mail that we need to do streams about, so that's been on my mind a lot lately. There's some interesting Siftio-related stuff that arrived that might be pretty cool. There's a kit from Citrus Circuits that I've been wanting to build. There's several bold port kits. So we've got some cool stuff to do. And I really appreciate everyone's contributions to this cool stuff to do. So thanks a lot if you sent in some objects for the stream, if you contribute to the Patreon, or even if you tell your friends about the show. Those all help out a lot. And I'm going to do my best to keep trying to wrangle this mess of technology and shop and cat and everything else into some kind of state that makes progress in a good direction. But if you have thoughts about what you'd like to see more of or what you'd like to see less of or what direction I should go in, then totally let me know. I've been feeling cranky about Twitter lately, so I've been trying to use Twitter a little less, but I'll still probably check that semi-regularly. But I'm also on Mastodon. And you can also drop me an email. As much as I hate email, it is sometimes the lesser of many evils, so that's also available. Or if you're a patron, of course, you can send me Patreon messages. So, yeah, new stuff will be nice. I'm annoyed with... So this project right here, this storage mess, kind of started as a result of my printer breaking. So I was trying to mail some stuff, and I needed some mailing labels, and the inkjet printer was just breaking for like the last time. I was so done with the inkjet printer breaking, so I took that as an opportunity to look for inkjets and or look at laser printers. And so I found a laser printer that was within my price range, and turns out color laser printers are actually affordable now. Who knew? So apparently a lot of people did, but not me. So I got a color laser printer, and I was setting that up, and as I was setting that up, I was noticing this cranky red light on my Drobo, which was really just a low space error, or a low space warning. It wasn't even an error yet, but it was a warning that it was having trouble reporting due to some other misconfiguration of my firewall on the machine that was supposed to be running the Drobo management software. It had like a local firewall that was blocking it. So as I was fixing that, I noticed that the firmware was out of date, and then the firmware update process is what triggered what was apparently a somewhat unrelated latent bug in the flash memory writing code that was not prepared to deal with a completely flat lithium battery. And maybe there was also other stuff broken. It's kind of hard to tell at this point, but yeah, all that. I'm getting tired of not having a better way to refer to this explosion of stuff that happens, because that seems to be what I'm always working on. But maybe this is what maybe this is really what people use like Bugzilla or Trello or whatever for. I just need to get back into the habit of using more management software to keep track of all the stuff that needs to happen. Right now I've been using text files and sticky notes for the most part, which is, I don't know, simple, but sometimes hard to manage. I'm also still really digging this little pushy button thing over here. I don't know how many people who are watching this now saw the couple of streams where I was building that, but that was a really quick project that I'm still quite satisfied with. So now that my storage situation is actually nice, like I'm actually really digging the new storage server. We've been working with this Drobo mess for a while, but I also set up this new server, which was really loud for like the last week and a half. It was just driving me crazy, and you could hear it on the last stream, but I finally last night moved it into the closet, so it's still not great. It still needs a lot of work in terms of setup and everything, really, but it's usable, and it's so much more usable than the old system was, so that's at least been nice. I've got this fiber optic cable running across the floor, plugging the file server into my editing machine, and that's been pretty handy. Anyway, that's all to say that I've actually got a pile of footage for this project that I'm actually really excited to turn into an edited video, so I should try to do some of that because it would be interesting for all of us. But anyway, enough of the ramble. Thanks again, and thanks for all the feedback and the patronage and the objects, and I will see you all next time. Happy hacking. Leave you with a little bit of Tuco on the way out. He's pretty sleepy, it looks like.